So they told you to lay off a convention of states because there'd be a runaway convention. That's bullshit. So if you've watched our channel and seen some of the videos that we've been putting out, including our intro video to our YouTube channel, which is kind of an epic Article 5 video, but even without that, we've put up quite a few videos discussing Article 5, and it's really an important thing to us, and I think more and more as time goes on, Article 5 becomes more and more a big deal. And I think more and more people are becoming aware of it, and because of that, I want to make sure that you understand, number one, where you can go to learn more about Article 5. We've got a ton of information on our website, www.thepatriotthinktank.com/COS for Convention of States. There are also links there that'll take you to the conventionofstates.com where you can sign the petition, find out who the legislators are in your state, and then even get a letter sent out it'll be sent out by Convention of States, but on your behalf to your legislator. So those are some simple things you could do to get started. But aside from that, I want to also arm you with some of the age-old arguments against Convention of States and give you some background as to why those arguments are nonsense. So we've covered other topics, other debunking stuff in previous videos, but right now we're going to focus on the runaway convention argument. So what you'll hear, once you educate yourself, let's say you go to the website, you see some videos, you get some information, you look up your state, you sign the petition, you go to the Convention of States website, register, check out some of their educational material on it. As you start to learn these things, you'll want to educate other people. It's a natural instinct because it's a really powerful thing that many people, thanks to the loss of civics in schools, don't know about. So what's important, I think, is that when you do this, you understand in advance the arguments that they're going to come at you with, because there are only a few arguments to come against each one, and we're here to give you that ammunition. So when they try to argue that there'll be a runaway convention, what they're going to say to you is that when the states select their delegates to go and attend the convention once it's been called, and it takes 34 states in agreement, they all have to have the same topics in alignment, all have to pass resolutions. Once they've done that, then the people that they send one delegate. Each state sends one delegate, each state gets one vote. Okay? So the delegates then head to the convention. Now in this case, we have the links to all the different resolutions. 15 of them have already passed, so there are 15 states on board. There are about 26 or so that are pending in one way or another. They at least have a resolution drawn up that we can pressure them to vote on, and that's more than enough, more than what we need. So if we can do it in each state that's pending still, combined with the 15 that are already on board, we could be calling this convention by springtime. So what they're arguing to you with the runaway convention is that when they send these delegates in, that the delegates are going to go rogue, that the delegates are just going to, all right, you sent us here to talk about three things: term limits, balanced budget amendments, and government overreach amendments. But you know what? We want to talk about getting rid of free speech, and we want to talk about, overturning civil rights, and we want to we want to bring back prohibition. So they think that this is a possibility. They think that they can do this. And of course, your first instinct would be to be like, that can't happen. And you'd be right. But they would try to argue to you, what do you mean it can't happen? It's already happened with the original convention. No, it did not. And I'm going to explain to you how that went down as quickly as I can. So, I'd love to make the video super short, but there's educational material here. There's information that I have to get out. So the original convention is the convention, if you're not familiar, where the Constitution was drawn up, where the document we know today, with all of its checks and balances and beauty, was drawn up. Well, that came about in response to the ineffectiveness of the first Constitution, quote unquote, which was the Articles of Confederation, a document that was written to bind the United States and make us a country, call us the United States, and set a ground rules which were horrific for how the central government should be run. Now, within those ground rules, and the reason they went back to totally rewrite it is because it was completely ineffective. For one, every state had its own currency. All right, so imagine going to New York, and you go to New York City, you get a slice of pizza, you give them money, you get your change back, you get it in New York currency. Then you take a ride over the bridge, you go to Jersey. Next thing you know, you want to wash that pizza down with a drink. You go to buy the drink, and they either don't accept your currency or have to start calculating exchange rates because they have a different currency. And then you go visit your uncle in Pennsylvania on this road trip, and when you get there, now you've got New York and New Jersey currency in your pocket, and none of it's really good in Pennsylvania unless you could find someone who will exchange it. And it just made trade a nightmare between the colonies and between the states, okay? So it wasn't an effective system. Secondly, there was no way in the Articles of Confederation to fund the federal government. There was no mechanism for it. So while I still think income tax is theft, that doesn't mean that there can't be any tax. That doesn't mean that the federal government should be completely defunded, right? I think most reasonable people who are not anarchists understand that we need a United States military. We need a way to defend our citizens from threats, foreign and domestic. And we need that to be the state-of-the-art best in the world because we are the free beacon of the world, and inevitably, every totalitarian government in the world will hate us. So that was necessary, but totally not done. The way the central government was funded was literally panhandling. They had to go to states and beg for money. And they were at state discretion as to whether or not they ever got that money. It was a hot mess. But what finally pushed the states over the edge, and by the way, there are a dozen or more serious problems with the Articles of Confederation. I'm just not covering them all because we're short on time. But the last thing that I wanted to cover was that the states were not even capable of protecting themselves from insurrection. All right, and when I say this, I mean Shays' Rebellion, which was probably the final tipping point for the states to decide, okay, if we're going to be all in this together, we need the central government to have some power. All right. Now, there's a lot of paranoia about this, about giving the central government power, because they all knew that eventually we'd get to where we are today. What they didn't know is how long that would take. So they went ahead, convened a convention, and the delegates went out, as you know today, the founders of our nation, and they started the debates, and they started going back and forth. Now, it's important to understand, number one, they were not going there under Article 5. Article 5 was not written yet, because the Constitution was not written yet. So that's the first point to make. The second point to make is that they were sent there with specific instructions to completely rewrite the damn thing, because every one of the states knew that it was garbage and that it couldn't go. That even coming back with some semblance of it was going to fail. We needed to have a central government that had some authority, and without anything less than that would have been useless. Just get rid of the central government and make it 13 different countries. So that understanding was there going in. And the founders went in and did just that. They went in and devised an absolutely brilliant document that has governed this nation for its entire existence to this very day. And they did it in such a way where it was able to be changed and amended so that if wrongs were done over the years, over the centuries even, that they could be rectified, that there were avenues for the people to be able to implement common sense based on whatever the common sense of that day was. If there was something, or things that were age old, right? Like they understood that civil rights someday was going to get addressed. I doubt they think it took as long. I doubt they thought it would take as long as it did, but it did. Okay, but that's up to humanity, not up to the Constitution. Right? The 14th Amendment was written for a long time before it really got used. And in the end, they set up these documents and came back to the states for those documents to be ratified. They did not just go and rewrite the Articles of Confederation and then show it to everybody what they did and expect everyone to buy in. The states still had to ratify this, which they did. Okay? So fast forward to today. All right? Now, when they drew this document up and they put in Article 5, the argument was for today. Now, they didn't know it was for this date, but they knew that the time would come today, which is today, where the federal government has grown out of control. And these delegates, when they're sent to the convention, they knew that they needed a way, or that the people really needed a way, not so much the delegates sent to the convention, the people really needed a way to curb the government once it got to critical mass. Once it got to the point where it was clearly not paying attention to the people anymore, that concerns were no longer a matter, that the only, spending taxpayer money on frivolous nonsense. If you go back and you can see one of our videos with Rand Paul starting it off and his rant on government spending, chickens doing cocaine and whatnot, while we're in trillions of dollars of deficits. When the government gets to that point, the only way to really stop it, traditionally, was revolution. That's it. Revolution, or an outside force comes in and takes out the government. Well, the founders, realizing that this was inevitable, did not want to see a revolution undo all the work that they did, so they simply put a mechanism in that allowed us to amend the Constitution without going to Congress. Because they knew if Congress has to have a say, that they're never going to vote for something that limits their power. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And the fact is, when these delegates go, they're under the same restrictions, really, for the most part, that they were back then. The states give them permission to speak on topics. Back then, the states gave them wide open discretion to speak on topics, knowing that it had to come back to them to approve. So they took people they trusted, made them delegates, and sent them out to figure this out. Well, today, it's the same thing. There are specific issues that are being addressed, and those issues being term limits for federal employees, elected or otherwise, balanced budget amendment, so they stop spending like drunken sailors and destroy the value of the dollar, and then government overreach to address things, for example, regulatory agencies like the Department of Labor forcing companies to fire their employees if they don't comply with what the president solely wants. Right? These are things that the government's not, there's no way Congress ever votes away those powers. They don't. Okay? So the resolutions that are written, and they're already written for these delegates to go and convene on, they specifically say those three things. Okay? It's not like they're just sending them there willy-nilly to go make up some stuff. So those are the topics they're allowed to talk about. So yeah, there's some latitude in there. I mean, government overreach is a broad term. But again, you send them there with these topics knowing that it has to come back to you. That nothing gets passed until it comes back to the state legislatures. And even then, 38 states, 3/4 of the states, have to ratify it in order for it to become an amendment. Now, the issues at hand are issues that Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, no one's against these concepts. Everybody is in favor. All right, the majority of each party is in favor. So this, for all we hear about diversity, here's unity. Here's something we all agree on. Here's something that we all think the same way on, right? Why not take the power back? Like, at some point, people have to realize it's not about Republican, Democrat, black, white, Latino, Asian, the list goes on, right? Gay, straight, transgender, whatever. That's not what we are. What we are and what defines us is that we're Americans, and we're all Americans. And the only two teams that are at war here are the American people and the federal government. You could throw Marxism in as a link with the federal government, considering recent months, but in essence, this is really the American people versus the federal government. That's it. And I know I hear from people, they've grown up, they don't feel like they're an American. Well, start feeling it. Now's the time. Start feeling it, because you know what? They're going to kick your door down too. And they're not going to kick it down and go, oh, you're of this race. My bad. We thought you were of that race that we're persecuting right now. Let's be on our way. No, they're going to drag you out just like everybody else. That's what happens when the crap hits the fan. And once it gets to that point, if we don't act before it gets to that point, it's too late. You can scream Constitution the whole way while they're dragging you into the back of the car and beating you with billy clubs. Because it's over at that point. It's over. So let's get together. Let's educate ourselves. Don't let anyone tell you runaway convention. Remember, even your state legislators may bring this argument. As embarrassing as that is, your state legislators may even bring this argument to you. There may be a professor at school that brings this argument to you. There's no debunking the facts that I didn't just bring up terms for debate. I just gave you the real. This is how it went down. This is not refutable. This is not something that people get to go, well, another version. No, there's no other version. This is how it went down. And in 2022, if we get together and we start getting on our legislatures and we start putting pressure on our state legislatures, this could be done. We'll be calling the convention in spring. We'll be calling it in the spring. Early summer, the latest. The absolute latest. That's how many resolutions are coming up for vote this coming legislative session in 2022. So we've got a few months to educate people, and then we've got to get active. So go and sign the petition. That's your first step before you do anything else. Go and sign the petition. We have links to it on our website. It'll take you right to the Convention of States, to that spot, and let you fill it out. You can look up your legislators there, and you know where to apply the pressure. It only takes 1,000, maybe 2,000 for sure, active people in any given state to apply the necessary pressure on these guys and girls that we need. Don't let them make this a partisan issue. Don't let them divide us anymore. Don't let them do it, because this divide and conquer stuff, I feel like everyone knows it's happening and no one is acting like it's time to unify. It's time to unify. Now is the time. If not us, who? If not now, when? I'm out.